We've seen the core rules. We've seen the data sheets. Now we have stratagems. It's time to actually talk about what changes will impact your wall. So today, let's get in with the rules for the wall. So today I'm going to break down, somewhat by phase, somewhat by interesting units I have want to talk about, and important stratagems and just sporadic rules. So some of these are actually going to be changes that happen. Some of these are going to be just unpacking things we've learned going forward and that I think are important for you to know. So I'm going to try to keep it short and sweet for you guys that don't have time to watch all of the hours and hours of content that it is just to understand the game. But here are the important rules. Generally, we'll just start with the battle shock real quick. Obviously, battle shock now is more impactful, especially for orcs. If you're going against Tyrannid, you're going to feel this greatly, for example, in that kind of army. People want to experiment with Night Lords, for example, but Nids was one of those factions that we would be like, oh, that's not cool that you can actually call this during our wall. Generally, if everybody knows, orc leadership generally always 7. The exceptions are stuff like Killicans or Groffs will be 8. You can even see with the new orc big boss, he's leadership 7 on him, so it takes quite elite characters like an actual war boss or Gazgul for that sweet leadership 6. That also means that clearing battle shock abilities like we've seen in the new detachments are going to be way more interesting, right? Being able to actually exchange some mortal wounds to knock someone out of battle shock is going to be important, and we've seen glimpses of those. I assume we're going to see more of those, especially when our codex actually drops. Very narrative. That's actually what orcs were known for before. I can knock someone out to actually assure my battle shock, which was very powerful, and it will continue to be powerful the more we actually have access to that, which I'm sure we will. So that's goes alongside with what our orcs and our identity, but also we can use here we go from within transports. What I mean by that is the rules you can see on screen is no longer a rule, right? Units that are actually in transports are now just considered a part of reinforcements just off the battlefield. Therefore, they can be declared for stratagems. That's very nice for people who still want to use Warhorde. Any more stratagems that we want to declare while inside of a transport. So that's very relevant to us orc players, and I think that's kind of been overlooked. Impact changes generally. Now you end up taking it on once as damage for yourself. Very interesting when you look at kill rigs because that applies to monsters and wagons. We like that. Those units, the rigs have actual feel no pain. The wagon might actually have enough wounds to retain it and then actually get healed. And then Def Judge can do it, but and it does stack with what your ability already is. Yet the Def Dread itself is such a slow wound count model that is not necessarily that appealing to me though, right? So has to take that into considerations, but those are some relevant important rules that we have to talk about real quick just from general rules. Of course, at the end I have more other summaries, but let's move into phases. The movement phase, right? So in movement phase, now we know 9-inch coherency is a big deal. It's going to be very important for mobs of boys, but also for pigs, right? Squig hog boys, if we want to start using these 9-man bricks, if anything happens interesting to them, which I'm going to give them some glow up because they did get some glow ups, for example, like mobile. But 9-inch coherency is going to definitely affect units like Zagrot, where I love to use them as a big wall or an umbrella. And then mobs of boys, where gas will touch one thing and then the other boys and the knobs will punch something else. That's not really going to be a factor. We're obviously going to be playing more in like a rank formation and whole as a game, which we'll talk about that more. But all in all, in the movement phase, now we have to keep this in mind. That also will apply for something like a trike and a bunch of bikers, but the bikers are necessarily fast already, so they can keep coherency. But still something to be thought of. Not necessarily a good rule for orcs, but something you have to keep in mind. It seems permanently in here to stay. Then we have transports. Now there's 2 different disembarkations. I want to make it clear for people, nice and simple. Combat disembarkations are pretty much by your choice, right? So just keep in mind now the rule in the entailment is when you disembark, that is your movement, so you have to continue to move, right? I cannot disembark and then move my truck and then move the unit that disembarked, right? It's all one continuous active motion now, meaning that you're going to disembark, move that unit, and then you can move the truck. So that's now an established core rule, but also the combat disembarks can actually be to the greatest of 3 inches away from you. You do not have to be right on top of the model when you're doing your intentional disembarks, which are considered combat disembarks. Now, as for emergency disembarks, this is different. This is when your transport gets destroyed. In that case, you have to disembark as close as you can to the model. You're not trying to take advantage of the 3 inches. That makes you very susceptible to overrun. That means our trucks can also end up being like a death trap for us in most cases. Battle wagons, maybe they're a little bit better, but generally they're still going to be getting hit with that, right? So those are the two distinguishing, types of disembarkations that are happening. Of course, when you emergency disembark, you can choose to get into combat, and then ones and twos, you'll take those mortals, and then you can also end up still getting hit because you don't get fights first. And then also in the movement step, to make it clear, if you see this on your Weird Boy, for example, ingress, right? Ingress is just what it's called whenever you're bringing stuff from reinforcements, right? Bringing stuff off the battlefield onto the battlefield, or moving something on the battlefield. Just baseline ingress. That way it makes it easy, and it's easy to understand with the stratagem of rapid ingress. Then we go into the shooting phase, right? No more fire and fade into transports. Of course, you can still fire and fade. Your enemy still can, tow into on objectives and shoot, which is going to be devastating for us to a degree that people can now do that with it looking very hull spammy this edition right now. It looks like a lot of people want to take some kind of tough transporty vehicle unit, tow it onto terrain. Tau want to enjoy the fact that they're going to be able to do that too. So a lot of towing going on and then firing off that. But as for units like our tank busters and one of the newer orc detachments that might or might not still exist later, but you cannot actually shoot the tank busters and then get back into the battle wagon, for example. That ability now has been just identified. Nobody can do that. So that's actually really good for us. Now, why I put gone to ground in quotations is, there's a rumor out there with Goonhammer, just to make it clear, if you are hidden and you're actually, truly out obscured and are in cover every qualification for that, there's a chance that this reduces the enemy to see you to 12 inches, right? So you're even more hidden instead of the 18 inches that it's at. So that's a huge deal if that's actually a thing, but we didn't see it in the core rule. So it's a question mark. Don't know if it's necessarily true yet, but that does pique my interest if it is, and who can actually get that ability passively. We've already seen that some armies can extend the hidden range or extract it, right? So it's a big deal here where if they can manipulate whether you're able to be seen or not, that's going to really suck for us or players who want to try to take advantage of this ability best we can. Now, as for us, being able to ignore cover is going to be huge, right? Torrent's going to be important. And ultimately, the question of is it worth investing into our DACA at all in the shooting phase is where we're at as an orc community that we have to face, especially when we're assembling our list. That was always a question, but now it's even more of a question. Of course, I'm going to have videos on how we can stack our buffs on that. I've already alluded to ways we have or we could. But for example, if you're bringing your DACA rig, it's going to be important that you actually bring a strat or a detachment that can actually give you benefits to your ability to shoot. Otherwise, it's going to be a very lackluster investment. It just may be a complete waste of points. Yet, you do need to gain the enemy's respect, just like always, especially with the other rules we're going to talk about. So I think that we're going to be looking at torrent weapons. This might even include our kill rigs, right? Where if someone wants to go stand their ground, big baddies, and beta heroic, you have to be able to punish them to a certain degree. And of course, if we can actually get better burner boys, there are rumors that burner boys are going to be a new kit that are coming out this edition. So if we get a new kit, hopefully it's also a new data sheet, and the new data sheet hopefully is an improved data sheet. So very interesting, and we have to consider if it's even worth investing into in this edition. But all in all, I'm in the camp that you're still going to need some DACA. You're still going to need to gain enemies' respect to counter heroic stagings and to really punish enemies that are trying to just bait you too much with skirmishes and scoring secondary. So as much as some people are just like, well, it's really bad, you can't do it, I think you definitely got to do it. So that's where I'm at least in the summary, before we unpack it more with all the rules. But let's talk about the charge phase. Nice and simple, just charge, right? Declare a wall, you roll your dice, you get to pick whatever you're going to end up going into. Very important in that. You don't have to base to base, get within an inch, and then to actually fight, you have to get within 2 inches. Now, heroic interventions are the most interesting part, at least one of the most interesting parts of the entire charge phase now. Of course, the fact that you have to roll a true number and essentially round up, so all charges are further, is very important to us wanting charge buffs. But as for the heroic interventions, right? Are we going to be playing in somewhat of a ranking row system where you're going to be staging up and preparing for heroic interventions, whether they are the 12-inch one on the enemy that actually completed a charge, or on the 6-inch one where someone's trying to flip the grot off an objective for you, right? Because I still think grots are going to be very strong for that. The terrain's very small, so grots are going to be important to stage up and actually put a little bit of OC on these natural expansions, sometimes the middle. Therefore, we have to consider where these heroics are going to be considered, and our own charges when enemies want to counter it. A lot of people have durable beat sticks, and when it's our go turn, they can kind of help stage up for their heroics. So I think it's going to be one of those rules that's going to really make or break orc players, right? Being able to actually possibly tar pit people at the during the charge phase is going to be the most important part for us as orcs, right? So let's say you have Gaz running into a big brick of Deathwing Knights or whatever that you want to kill. Because they can heroic at the end of the charge phase, that means during your charge phase, you could possibly charge their, you know, most threatening heroic unit. For example, let's say it's the Lion, and I charge him with Storm Boys during my charge phase. Well, then now he's not eligible to declare heroic at the end of the charge phase, right? So as long as we all understand overrun correctly, or at least as they intended currently, then the Lion then hopefully can't overrun off that. But from what we do understand as orcs, being able to actually tar pit people with our chaff to stop that is going to be somewhat important too. So I love the stratagem. You know, units that actually gives buffs to it or like give you more access to it are going to be important, which we're going to be talking about in the next slide. But also, we have the charge buffs that I think people need to always consider. Breaker Boys, love that we actually get reroll charges now. Beast Boss and Squigosaur, you get a +1 to your charges, and you can reduce the heroic cost by 1. And then we have enhancements that also give +1 to charges. We have stratagems that also increase your charges. These are going to be a huge deal for us, as we're not going to be able to use stratagems during the charge phase. Unless it's just one reroll at the same time, right? So getting the buffs to make them more assured on our one go turn would be way better. We're seeing more of those rules, and if GW rewrites some of our rules, you're really going to have to take them into consideration, because even reducing your charge probability by like 8% or 12% is going to be a big deal on the actual go turn throughout multiple games and rounds to be efficient throughout like an event type setting. So charge buff bonuses are absolutely on the menu, should be looked for, should be in intention, applied to your list. I know most people want to triple, quadruple the killy enhancements that we're going to have, but there might be a place where you can make some more assured charges also, because ultimately getting to places on the battlefield is how we win games as orcs. Now, what I'm actually quite excited for, to not be doom and gloomy, because some people are doom and gloomy out there. I'm not that doom and gloomy. I'm going to actually have some fun here with what I'm hoping, predicting, but also I want to talk about some of these units that I find are also appealing right now. So one I already alluded to earlier, were pigs getting the mole keyword, right? They also don't have to pay for pivot, just like none of the vehicles do. Something I didn't put on here that I want to say before I forget is that we did also see smoke. So smoke typically is not something we've had, but WAAAGH has it. So WAAAGH has smoke. If for some reason we're going to be using WAAAGH to pop smoke, it applies to the units that are behind him, which could be more interesting for these biker units, these trikes, these buggies. Could be interesting for trying to obscure some pigs or just some mobs of bullies, for example. We don't know how his data sheet's going to change moving into the next edition, if he's going to be that appealing, but he is the only person that actually has smoke currently. So before I forget that, but nonetheless, pigs, rigs, monsters, all these units don't have to pay for a pivot, so they've gained speed, and then the pigs being able to move directly through terrain is going to be important. Now, them having to be coherency 9 means that I'm still not sold on them being in 9-man units. So 4-mans maybe can be on the menu. As we talked about heroics, pigs are fun heroic targets. I've done it a bunch. That's actually why I've been using them a lot when I was using them in freebooters, when I was playing with little units of pigs for my own fun sake. At the end of the edition, I was using them as threats for heroics, or they were bait that I could actually use gas to heroic and attempt off, right? Because people can always shoot them right off the objectives like the pigs. Therefore, they sometimes want to countercharge it to follow up and pick them up. And in that case, gas is there also. So I like that. Pigs are going to have a little bit more mobility here. They need all the benefits and buffs they can get. Hopefully, that's not the minimum amount they get. But another thing they got as a buff, as most of these units on this listed, is attack modifier. So as that makes sense, that means our actual attacks can get +1 from the wall, or extra attack modifier. So the mounted unit can possibly get it now, and that seems pretty awesome. And all the other Maz's mount, the kill rig itself was used explicitly as the example when we were talking about this. So attack modifiers are going to be sick. They can be used. I do love right now solo beast bosses. I wanted to bring that up. At least in my mind, we don't know where they'll be at as points. Typically, they're pretty trashy for like what their output is and such. But if they're cheap enough, which right now they're kind of in that area, them being able to sit behind terrain, it sounded kind of like to guard natural expansions behind garage, throw some heroics forward, stage up pretty well. they can end up getting in skirmishes, don't get just immediately picked up and traded for their cost. Because they have feel no pains, I might be willing to attempt a impact charge with them on tougher units because he has feel no pains as well, like I said, and that applies to all of these, right? So let's say that you end up using him and you decide to stick a 4-up feel no pain super cyborg body and a solo beast boss. Now when he runs in, he's way harder to kill. He can use impact charges and possibly tank all that damage and then continue to fight from there, and cover ground and move up the field in that way and get in these skirmish activations that I think is more appealing. Or maybe just with 4-man units and he makes them more viable for this capability. So I'm a bit excited about them. Like I said with rigs earlier, I mean, was that we might be using, these secondary and detachments, which could also be the Blitz Brigade detachment, which apply to rigs, and I actually really like that as well. Now we know they're getting tougher. We can use them as transports if we're not going to be using trucks as much. Or if we are, then it's just using them as the monsters that they can be beat sticks. That could be kind of fun too if they're at the right point cost. And they're not slowed down as much anymore. And that detachment makes us even faster. So I'm pretty excited about these units. Like I said, though, with the War Tower being torrents is also going to be appealing, right? The enemy has to actually have somewhat respect for you if they're trying to stage up these silly little heroics that are just ranked formations and you have no DACA at all on the field, at least nothing that can threaten them too much. Well, maybe now the transports being able to torrent you and pick some of those units up will also be appealing part of the rigs. So all in all, I'm pretty excited about them. Like I threw WAAAGH DACA in there. So that's it for the pigs and rigs models that I wanted to talk about. So keep an eye on these guys until we see the full data sheets and rules. I want Moz to get a glow up. I need all my orc pigs and rigs to get glow up here, but they did get a little bit of love that I think needed to be brought to everyone's attention. When you think of it that way, you're like, all right, these guys are not nearly as hurt as they were looking at. Now, other fungal rules that I want to apply, and then I'll go to all the super chats and all the gifted memberships that are going crazy right now. So make sure you guys get stuck in the chats here because we'll have a good time for that. Is other rules. So lethal option, right? If you're actually punching something with your lethals, you don't have to take the lethal on that hit roll. It could just be a normal hit. So specifically what I'm talking about is when your Beast Boss unit and your Beast Snagger boys are in range of Makari's aura, for example, and you want all your actual Snagger boys to get lethals. You want a critical 5+ hit because you want to, fish for all the 5+s, re-roll the entire hit roll, and just punch that thing to death, right, with your Snaggers. But you're like, oh, my Beast Boss is going to end up taking lethals on those hits. That's not the case anymore. You could just choose not to take those hits as 5+ lethals. Now, in some case, you're like, I'm going to take them anyways because they're sustained. But not every time everybody's in War Horde, and not every time is everybody getting sustained at the same time. So bear with me here if it's not sustained, if it's just lethal, like a different detachment. Let's see, you got a buff from a kill rig, whatever, right? You can actually decide I'm not going to take it on that. And then I'm going to just put it straight through and do the wound roll and then go for the dev wound. So we don't have a ton of units that are doing that. For Edwapa's Kill Chopper, we can do it, and for this one. So as I was talking about solo beast bosses on Squigosaur, that's another option for them with Edwapa's Kill Chopper. They run in there with dev wounds and they get in these fights as well. Now, keep in mind, pile in within 5 inches to get into combat, right? So if you're close when you're staging up, this is going to be very important for us as orc players when people are actually trying to screen us. This is something I've been trying to teach and put out there into the meta for orcs since I started the channel. We understood this. If 2 units charge the same thing, just like in GW's example, which I think I removed the slide, but when 2 little corn dudes are fighting it, whatever, we used to do that. Pigs and Beast Snagger boys was the example I would give. So now you're going to have to very much more apply that and always look for that, right? Right now, I'm instilling this in all you guys. Teach it to your friends and always look for that. Always look for the pile-in so you can get those additional 5 inches. Always look for the overrun. These are going to be very, very hyper important rules for us in this edition. This is going to make or break you in every single game, right? Normally, I always say, like, hey, your movement phase is the most important phase to win games. That is the case. But bear with me that your pile-ins, your overruns, and your heroics are going to be pivotal as your orc player with your experience, even if you want to be one of those combined arm shooting DACA boys, right? So if you're really just looking to be a bully boy, though, for example, I need you to focus on throughout the entire game looking for ways that you can pile into other units that are further away. Get a widget, get something on deck, and as soon as you get your fights and your pile, just look around, right? Let's see who else can I get in here within this range after I kill this guy, right? Already have it in set where your enemy's established in that case. And then for overrun as well, very important in that case. with getting multi-charges on. Always remember your consolidations. Consolidations now changed. You don't have to move the center of the puck. You can move behind stuff and actually further away. Now, another thing I want to say that's important that I didn't put on here is how devastating and powerful reaction moves are, right? So reactive moves are going to be a big issue for any of us that are going into pure melee focus on our list, and they're not really fast. So it's going to be important that you either bring other units that can move around the reactive unit first preemptively and try to like umbrella box them in, or you're going to need something fast enough to cover the distance. And it doubles down on what I said earlier, where you're going to really want to look at those buffs that apply to your charge roll, because enemies are going to be able to get reactive flat and it's going to be harder to get to them. In turn, us reacting, whether it's our Grots and Dread Mob, our bikes and Cult of Speed, whatever other reactionary moves we get are going to actually be important for that same reason. So keep in mind, I didn't put that on here, but it is something I wanted to talk about online with all the charging and fighting and everything, right? So there's a lot of movement shenanigans going on to a degree in this game, even though it's more linear. Like it was more agreed upon, I guess we could say, right? Everything's straightforward. We're going to be mashing it out in the middle, but there's a lot of room for error. Now, leaders keep abilities. We'll see if it actually is the case where the pain boy can regen den boys. There's always the case that if you have gas boys, like people want to do right now, gas boys, 20 boys and a pain boy in a unit with the new fast dice rolling, you could hypothetically, if someone is trying to blend your entire unit, try to get Makari to tank the 2-ups, have the pain boy takes the 1 saves when he gets to the character part of the unit. But if it's a precision, they can still choose Makari. So in some cases, it might be better to actually hide Makari physically so he cannot be precision. Don't forget about that rule, because people can just choose to delegate Makari from precision, not and bypass your pain boy. But keep in mind, the new fast rolls do make us a bit tougher, but also makes our opponents a bit tougher. Another thing is the heal. We've seen the heal. I do hope that, for example, the pain boss gets a buff where he can heal the actual mounted units, and he used to do it to the mounted squigs, but now it's not. So I need someone that can heal my monsters. So I hope that he gets that buff, and I hope that's what heal means and applies to. If that's even better for our squigs, our rigs, I really do want that. Last, certainly not least, is solo characters are really vying for position because of how they can possibly play the mission. So Snickrot and Weird Boys, being just solo leader, actually have a place as well. I'm pretty pumped about that. So I think everybody should be pumped about these characters and other fungal important rules. Now, another thing I want to talk about here with everybody while they're paying attention, I do not think that boys are going to be reduced to 10-man units, right? I've seen that rumor online quite a bit. I simply think they're trying to make the rules as simple and applicable as possible to whoever buys the box. And when you get the box and you have 2 knobs in your unit of 20 dudes, and it says you can have 20 dudes, you're like, oh, what do I do with this knob now? Oh man, that sucks. He's gonna look like a boy. It starts messing up the new player's name, like mindset, right? That happened to me. I bought 2 boxes of boys. I want to run 20 man. I had 2 knobs. It felt awkward. It felt weird. I ended up converting a run herder to a boy to offset it. So I barely own any run herders for that reason, right? So the reason GW is likely putting it like that is because you get 2 knobs for each being deliberately 2 10-man units of boys. Makes it nice and simple to use. They only give you the rules that apply to that data card as well, so it's nice and simple to use. So you are going to get access to Power Claws. GW already confirmed that, and your rockets and all that, so no need to worry about it. Trust me on this one. Our units are still going to have 20 guys. If not, then I'll face that when it comes, but I'm pretty confident on that as well. Now, if there's anything else people want to say, let's get stuck in with all the gifted memberships. I want to say thank you very much to you guys for being so generous. I was trying to keep this nice and concise for the gift. I just want to know all the rules that apply to us to get our squig juices flowing and everything that we can get stuck in on. If there's anything that you think I missed or you want us to talk more about, let me know in the comments. I think there's still a lot to unpack, but I'm reserving it until I actually see the points. Then I'm going to do a tier list video and unpack all the units going into the edition on where I think they're at, and then it'll be a great time for all of us. Now, any thoughts on the Codex drop? Tyranids was approximately 2 months and about 12 days after, something like that, ChatGPT says, from when the the edition started. So I assume we'll be roughly around 2 to 3 months as well. Maybe 3, maybe, so we'll see something about that. I just know that right when we start getting comfortable with the rules, codexes are going to drop and throw another, monkey wrench in the chain for that. But thank you very much. Also, I wanted to say planes, right? The planes, we can use our planes. Let's hope that a good point cost. They're not really good at shooting, so I'm not sure if they're back, but there is a way we can actually use them now if they're cheap enough. But we did, in my opinion, start getting our hogs back. We'll see if GW put them at a decent point cost. Thank you very much to the 10 WAAAGH Tactic memberships. Whoa, to Mr. Flynn. So thank you very much to that. We're using it all to support the Great Wall and actually keep it all going and get all the stuff supplies going to the next edition. So thank you very much. It helps a lot, and the contact going to the members as well, where you can check me out mumbling through it after action reports and more. So 5 WAAAGH Tactic gifted memberships. Whoa, thank you to the Bad Dog for the endless support and love that you always give you and Flynn both. It means a lot to everybody being generous. You guys are clearly excited for the Great Wall. We have to lead with 5 WAAAGH Tactic gifted memberships. Whoa, let's go. Thank you very much for that. It means a lot that how generous you guys are being, because it's moving. So thank you very much. And last but certainly not least, 12 Bravo Joe, or the known to be the Wicked Joe, for 10 WAAAGH Tactic gifted membership. So thank you to you guys, Joe, Talib, the Bad Dog, Flynn. So thank you very much for that. And if you got one of those W's in chats for that, if you're a part of Rewatch Gang as well, and we're gonna go into this edition nice and strong, because this is the Great Wall. While everybody's looking all excited, then he has a super chat with Mega Knobs and the Green Tide as well. And our boy Koda with the big pig. Yeah, dude. I think the pigs seem like they're gonna have some play. I'll just say it right now, since we're getting so much member support too. Reveal my hand, for example, right? I'm looking at the hunt with some kind of support unit. I assume all the codex units are going to be 2 DP points, and then the support ones are going to be 1. So the hunt's going to get 2, and then it's going to get some kind of supplementary support. Beautiful. That's what I want to see. Like I said, it might be the Blitz Brigade, for example. That would be sick. Another one, of course, the Dread Mob, Def Dreads. I don't know about them, but the Dread Mob itself with Mordaka is another one on my list for the top 3. And then the last combo that I'm looking at is Cultist Speed with the Speed Wall. So the Speed Wall actually gives you ranged benefits and buffs and vehicle support to units in that detachment. So there's a lot of fun ways that you can actually like unpack it. So I'm pretty excited about those 3 combos. You let me know what combos you're excited for. Some crazy people right now are also saying the Dreadbomb wants to run all cans, right? Cans are looking, they need mobile keyword. So cans are the only like volume of options we have for flamers, like burners, right? So I don't think it's horrible. I just don't think it's great, right? And so, yeah, I'm pretty excited about all of this. And Talib said, whenever I catch you, whoa, that's what I'm talking about. Thank you for the love. And it means a lot. It's very generous when you guys are like that. It makes me all greening and squishy inside. And thank you very much. And yeah, we got banner knobs actually being able to lead flash kits. It's another good call there. All the rocks going into strength yet 10 is also great there as well. So I'm pumped about those 3 detachments. You guys let me know where you're at. What combos are you guys looking at? Whether it's for detachments or unit composition. We don't know what's going on with the enhancements yet. As soon as we do, we'll talk about that as well. We do know you can double them down, but what are they going to be? How are they going to be changed? What are they going to apply to more? So there's a lot to say still, but this is at least to get our feet kicked off, and you don't have to watch an hour and a half video to know how all the rules apply to your wall. So if I missed anything, if there's anything else to say, leave it in the comments. Let me know. But there's always one thing to keep in mind is don't cross our wall, because we'll knock your teeth out.